Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I am Agi Keramidas and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out and take action towards the next level of your life. I am interviewing leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week, every Monday and Thursday. This is the second part of the interview with Sophia Vasiliou. If you missed the previous half, tune in to the episode number 45. Sophia, what are the most common areas of life that you see your clients having problems with? Are there some ones that are much more than the others, that you see over and over again?
It's really quite varied.
Okay.
Success and abundance is definitely something that seems to be on a lot of people's minds.
Yes.
But often as we go deeper, really at the seed of everything, there's usually a sense of self-worth, self-love, being enough, and it always seems really cliche to kind of go there. And yet, our relationship with ourselves is the fundamental relationship that informs all others. And going back to the shamanic paradigm, everything is about relationship. The way we interact with our environment is all based on the relationship that we have with it and what we believe or perceive about it. And so being in right relationship and harmony is the fundamental aspect of coming into this sort of happy place of being at peace, being at one. That's being at one with the universe. It's right there. We have to frequency match whatever it is we're working with, and that's our oneness.
Tell me, since you brought it up, tell me then about shamanism. You say you did a 3-year apprenticeship in Peru, in the Amazon. So what was that?
So I guess to start off this story, for you and your listeners, are you aware of what ayahuasca is? Or would you like me to explain a little bit about that first of all?
Please do. I am, but I'm sure that some people are not.
Okay, fabulous. So ayahuasca is a tea, in inverted commas, used throughout the Amazon basin by various tribes. And essentially, it's a hallucinogenic or psychedelic brew that is used to connect with the spirit realm. And in that shamanic paradigm, it is a actual parallel universe. The dimensions of it overlay this one's, but it is a tangible place in which other beings are able to communicate with us. And so in that paradigm, they mainly talk to plants and the spirits of plants, which are extremely intelligent. But there are also animal allies as well that come in. But, each plant has its own world. It's very complex in terms of the world view. But essentially, ayahuasca is a vehicle in which we can change our perception frequencies and tune into this other dimensional place and have conversations with other beings, and also with aspects of ourself that we may not be able to access. And so in the Amazon, the tribe I was working with, the Shipibo, the shamans themselves use this like a medic would use an MRI machine. So they go into the ceremony, they have their patients there in front of them, and the shaman would drink and be able to do a scan of the patient. And so they look for the roots of the illness, when it started, how it started, and the plants would tell them what other remedies this person would need in order to get them from where they are to health. And so it's a diagnostic tool with an element of moving any energetic stuff that they can release at the time and asking the plants. Many people have the experience of plant doctors doing surgeries on them in ceremony, and so experiencing sort of having, you know, black tar removed from a liver, or, you know, also emotional components coming up, and making connections to events that have happened to you and how that's affecting you now, and what beliefs that's created in you. As more Westerners start to drink ayahuasca, there is a much bigger shift towards a psychological paradigm usage of it. And so many people go to the Amazon in order to release emotional traumas, to get healing on a psychological level. And so there's these two worldviews coming together of, you know, like one guy who runs ICEERS, who's a very big organization that desires that the use of plant medicines throughout the world to help humanity. He described the Shipibos as plumbers. you know, they're very practical. It's all about doing something extremely practical. And this is where a lot of confusion comes in around ayahuasca, because over here we have this idea of the Eastern enlightened guru type person, and we think all spiritual people of any indigenous type have this shift towards enlightenment kind of idea. And so when they go to the Amazon and they're dealing with shamans, they have a very shocking revelation that these guys, you know, they're of the jungle, you know, and they're dealing with people's shadows and their dark recesses rather than aiming towards the light. They're digging and bringing up darkness to be integrated and revealed. And it's a very different energy, and it's much more tribal and earthy. And there's and yeah, I see the Shipibos as, they're not spiritual doctors, they're doctors who happen to work with spirits. And so they will heal you in mind and body. And what was beautiful about the family that I worked with is they have this connection with a plant, which is considered a master plant. And she is a tree. The translation of her name is the flying tree. In Shipibo, it's Noyarao. And she is a direct connection to spirit. And so this family's lineage has this energy of only working towards the light, actually. But that's extremely rare in Amazonian shamanism as a general rule. But it's very profound, because it really is about this evolution of humanity towards becoming more spiritual beings. So I don't know if I even answered your question there. I could ramble about this for a long time.
This conversation and inevitably would go on to many different threads simultaneously, might I add. So that's fine. I will try to untangle if I can. I wanted to ask you, so who do you think ayahuasca is for? Or is there a kind of person that should really, apart from the people that have an innate interest in it, like myself, for example, I would say this is fascinating, I would love to experience it. But who is it for, do you think?
Oh, that's a big question.
Or maybe who is it not for? Since you mentioned some Western paradigms, and I know there are some uses or that are not really in line with the spiritual element, or the
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because there are some people sort of in the circles of ayahuasca who says everyone should drink, and, you know, if everyone had 10 ceremonies before they went into government, the world would be a better place, and, you know, and everyone just needs to drink. And I completely disagree with that. You know, as we were talking about earlier on in this conversation, some people are ready to shift their worldview and some people are not. And I think the psychic emotional trauma of having a worldview completely torn apart can be too much for someone. Plus, then you have certain psychological issues that, ayahuasca could be very damaging for. So schizophrenia, for example, certain types of bipolar. There is someone in the UK, an Australian guy, who is actually trying to find the correct type of ayahuasca that will be safe for bipolar people to drink. But, anyone with sort of a non-typical neurochemistry needs to be really careful, because it's an extraordinarily powerful plant, and it contains DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. It's meant to be the strongest psychedelic or hallucinogen in the world. We produce it naturally in our brains or somewhere in our system. They're not really sure where. But that has positives and negatives, and also the physical aspect of ayahuasca is extremely, or can be extremely, overwhelming for some people. It lasts for 4 to 6 hours. You're purging often out of both ends at some point, and so traditionally, often it would be the shaman who drinks, and the patients just are in ceremony. And having work done to them. But now sort of it's much more common that the participants also drink. And so they're dealing with the effects of this medicine as well. And so they're having, their own traumas and stuff coming up to be released, because again, it's this idea of going in and pulling stuff out from the roots. Now, if you've ever worked as a therapist, people don't really like to go there. They can tell you all the stuff wrong with them, but when you say, oh, but let's go deeper on that, they change the subject.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's
and
painful.
Ayahuasca doesn't let that happen. It forces you to look at it, and the more you resist, the more it causes physical disruptions in your system.
Yes.
And so there's the nausea, and there's the pain, and until you're ready to let go and have that really big vomit or purge, you can be in this hellish place for a really long time. And we talked about this earlier, this fear of letting go sometimes, or the grief that can come with letting go of something that's been part of our identity for a really long time. Even when it's negative, we still can, who am I without this pain? Who am I without this trauma? And that fear of dissolving the ego, some would call it, is so immense that it can, you hold on for dear life to that sense of identity, and you can just be in for the most crazy ride. And that's why many people call it 15 years of therapy in a night. But the after effects, what do you do with that then? How do you integrate that into your life? And for some people it's an easy ride, and it makes amazing changes, and they are just new humans in their own existence. And for other people, it's this toing and froing process of feeling amazing and then completely not knowing who you are or what's going on. And so I wouldn't say it's for everyone, for sure. And something I've come up across recently a lot is people who've had really strong Christian upbringings can have a really rough time with the post-processing. I've had a couple of clients recently who are extraordinarily traumatized, because there's this whole programming around spirits and the devil and hell and evil, and trying to work through that reawakening of some traumatic experiences. And sometimes they're stuck in the old trauma and having a new trauma on top of it from ceremony. And, that's all the kind of the difficult sides of ayahuasca, I suppose. But in terms of those who should, I would never say anyone should take it unless they're drawn to it. And I would definitely say research your set and setting, Because, there's some places in the jungle that are awesome and there's some that really aren't so awesome. And, if you need psychological support for dealing with old traumas, you'll need facilitators who speak your language, who know the ropes and who can guide you through that process. Because, the indigenous shaman, they're incredible. The work they do is amazing, but they're not designed to help people through that in a way that we understand it. And so making sure that you're in a place that's safe for you in terms of what you need. If you're going for a physical ailment, go to the jungle. They have access to plants there that we have no idea what they are and never even studied them, and they can do incredible stuff. But if you're looking for the psychological stuff, make sure if you do want to go to the jungle that they have facilitators there that speak a Western paradigm language as well, so they can support you in that journey.
There were a couple of things that I wrote down as you were saying this. One was the people who are ready to shift their worldview, and that's really it makes complete sense to me, and it's fascinating because, and by definition, I think when you are about to shift your worldview, you don't know what's going to be on the other side. It's your worldview, the way you've seen things until now. And you also mentioned dissolving the ego and identity who we've been carrying with us all our life. And, it reminded me when you were saying that, there is a phrase I read in a monastery in Greece many years ago, and it said, if you die before you die, then you won't die when you die. And I think you're nodding now. I think that in a sense, that dissolving of the ego and the identity, that's how I perceive it anyway. It's what that phrase describes as the dying before your physical death. So something else like the ego or some parts of the identity die. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also taps into sort of some of the concepts in Buddhism, that life is a preparation for death. And the more you can, you dying consciously is the ultimate goal, so that you don't die, so that you're aware when you make that transition from this physical vehicle to another state of being. And ayahuasca is really good practice for that. And yeah, just that. I mean, for me, my biggest breakthrough with working with ayahuasca came from reading Joe Dispenza's book, You Are the Placebo. Because in that, he really helps you understand that you don't have to believe all of your thoughts. Your thoughts, again, come from this habitual cycle of ways of thinking that are connected to, addictive emotions, that you like the molecules of that emotion in your system. So your body starts to crave it. And so, for example, if someone's really depressed and they get happy for a little while, even though they're happy, something doesn't feel quite right. And that's because chemically, their physical body is addicted to the chemicals of depression. And so at some point, your body's like, oh, I'm happy, but I don't really like this. So it starts to make your mind whir until you feel that depression again. And then it's like, oh yeah, I recognize this is much better. And the thoughts that your body generates are there to trigger an emotional response, but you have to hook into the thought and believe it to allow that response to happen. And what ayahuasca and what Joe Dispenza teach is that separating the idea that you have to believe every thought you have. And once I sort of realized that, it's like, because you can start to panic, like, oh my God, this is really painful. Like, but is it really? Is it just slightly uncomfortable? Is it just a bit different to how I normally feel? Because we often label things in extremis. And when, I try and teach this to my nieces and nephews, when they're like, ow, 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 I'm like, does it really hurt? Is it uncomfortable or is it pain? They're like, well, actually, it's just a bit sore, but not really. And it's such a natural thing to do. And yet discerning what you're thinking and if it's really what you're perceiving is a really great tool. And that can help you separate from this egoic existence to a state of having space around you. It's the space inside your mind that allows you to access and touch the void, which is that dying before death. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you thought earlier that we would be having this kind of conversation.
Oh, I love it. I'm in my element. I just hope your listeners are finding it interesting.
Let me I want your comment on something else that you mentioned briefly. I think it is something that is happening more with the times that we're living in. It was, you mentioned something about the level of humanity or the consciousness of humanity, which many people say that there is a big raise on it and something is about to shift, to change. Just a comment, what's your thoughts on that?
So I don't think it's about to change. I think it's changing. I think we're finally in that window of the shift.
Yes.
In my universe, what's happening is we're going from one frequency band to another. So if you imagine, we can see the rainbow at the moment from red to violet, and that's one spectrum of perception. And what we're doing is we're actually changing the dial, so we'll be on a different octave.
Yes.
So as we make that jump from violet into sort of whatever comes after violet, because we can't see that, we're in that bridge moment at the moment, and that's why it's so uncomfortable. And the best visual image I can get, have you ever looked at cymatics? So where you have sound producing shapes. So there's some really cool stuff online where you see the rice or sand on a board and a speaker underneath with a specific frequency. It makes beautiful geometry. And then they twist it to get to the next true pitch. And as it goes between one pitch and another, the whole mandala just crumbles and disintegrates. And then it finds the true pitch and it makes this perfect, beautiful pattern again.
I have goosebumps just by your description. I can see that in my mind.
And that's exactly where I think we are right now. We're between one pitch and another. And yeah, I've got goosebumps too. And so what we're perceiving right now around us is absolute chaos as the old systems crumble, as the old ways of thinking, the old belief patterns are just completely dissolving, and we think we're in absolute chaos. But what we're happening is we're refining our vibration, and at some point we'll emerge into a pattern that's more beautiful and more coherent than we ever thought could be possible. But we've just kind of got to ride out this blip in the middle, and this is where I say, living in the heart and actually being able to emotionally stay in your center and stay calm in amongst the eye of this storm, and really think about what values are important to you. What do you want to take through to this new earth or this different world that we're creating? And the more you consciously think about those things, the more that's the energy that will be placed into this mandala, because we're all in it together. We're all creating this new frequency. So is it going to be one based on fear or love? Is it going to be one based on collaboration or competition? Is it going to be harmony or dissonance? And we have that choice right now. We are absolute creators of our reality, as we've discussed, through our beliefs and our thoughts. And so let's take time to think and feel a better world into existence.
Do you think, I completely agree with you, do you think that in some ways the virus and the situation with that has played a role in maybe accelerating things.
Yeah, I mean, the whole virus thing is such an interesting and multifaceted mess. Because there's different strands of consciousness and different strands of awareness playing into the story of what's happening. So earlier I was speaking about, you have the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual densities, and each of those places holds a different awareness. So when we see the world through the lens of just the physical, there's this deadly virus supposedly that doesn't actually kill that many people, but it's a whole other conversation. A deadly-ish virus that swept the world, but has created, a fear response that has locked down the economy, the humans, and so many different things. But then early on, many people were making videos about what's the spiritual effect of lockdown. We're en masse going into retreat. We can't go out, we can't see the people we like, we can't connect outwardly, and we have to go inside and start to assess what's meaningful for us.
Yes.
If I'm not at work now and I've actually got time and space to think, how do I want my life to look when I come out of this? So yeah, it ties exactly into what I was saying, because people had time and space to see what meant something to them outside of the rat race. And that was a profound shift in consciousness. And a lot of people I know, like, I don't want to go back to my job the way it was. I was a complete hamster in a wheel. So it's, as much as it's push, there's a schism at the moment with the virus narrative, and it's pushing some people deeper into the fear and the fight or flight, and it's pushing some people deeper into the awakening to new possibilities and co-creating. And this division is fascinating, because we're seeing more and more polarization. People are becoming more and more opinionated and angry and volatile. Someone says something they don't agree with, and there's just like a million comments of just vitriol, and yet massive support, and just this split in two different worldviews. And some people in the spiritual community are saying this is actually going to be an energetic split, and at some point that's going to create two separate entities of Earth, and we will be overlaid and yet not aware of each other's existence anymore. And that's kind of like the really far out view of what's happening. Imagine, have you seen the film The Others with Nicole Kidman? It's sort of, she moves into a house and they hear echoes of people in the house.
Yes.
And then eventually you find out that there's, an 18th century family also living in the house. And, there's two, I got goosebumps. And there's these two things happening in the same physical space, but they're not completely aware of each other.
Yeah.
And with this polarization, this splitting, it feels like at some point that's sort of how it's going to play out. I don't know how on earth that would happen, but, things are shifting so rapidly and so fast that, fair game. If your mind's open, anything's possible. And, infinite possibility is, quantum physics says that, there's infinite versions of us existing already in parallel universes and lives. So why not have the entire timeline split between two versions of reality, whether we're vibrating in the harmony or the chaos?
You said about there are many things that come to mind. That's why I look a little bit puzzled of where to go from here, because there are many. All right. So you said about the fear versus love, the approach on the virus or on the change, and I'll just make a quick comment that this really can relate back to spirituality, because if you have faith that things happen as they should, and because they are overlooked, if not orchestrated by something bigger. So if you have faith that this is the case, then there's no fear. There's nothing to be afraid of. But yes, that there will be a transition. Of course, people don't usually like change. It's part of the, maybe the beliefs, or they don't want to go out of what's comfortable, but it's necessary. For nothing changes if things remain the same, and we need a change for sure. I want to ask you something a little bit different. What is your personal vision and purpose as Sophia?
Wow. So, I mean, I feel extremely lucky because I feel like I found my vocation fairly early. And, my personal vision in terms of my life and what I do is this, it is helping people open their minds, helping people awaken perceptions to understanding that we are the spirit having a physical experience. And through doing that, it's like when people go on this journey, they're like a diamond or a gemstone that's covered in dirt. And as we start to kind of strip away or create new beliefs and perceptions, we're just taking off layers of dirt. And at some point, there's this beautiful jewel that emerges, which is what was always there. So that's why it's an awakening and unfolding and just helping people realize their absolute essence. And yeah, as you said, having this absolute faith that everything is exactly as it should be, and just really trying to hold a frequency of love and compassion and acceptance. Everyone is where they're at. It's a play. It's a cosmic play, and taking life too seriously is always a risk. Something else ayahuasca is good for is understanding the cosmic joke many times over. But, bringing playfulness back into humanity, bringing that kind of spirit, that joy, and creating a world that accesses joy and human values, singing together, dancing together, being, a community. I think, again, where this virus comes in, that's the price of stripping away all of the things that make us human. And I think this is where, the powers that be and the things that are trying to do that are going to completely fail, because this is the essence of who we are. And at some point, it's never going to stay that way. Things always come back to the place where they're meant to be, and we are community beings. And right now, I suppose my vision is really helping children, because they're the ones who are going to suffer most. As much as they have the apparent resilience to adapt and look like it's not damaging them, there's a couple of generations of children that are going to need a lot of support to deal with what's been going on in terms of fearing other people and being told that, the world is not a safe place. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's extremely intriguing, fascinating, and even though we've taken so many different directions with this conversation, and I might find a few more at some point, but I want just to ask some quick fire questions, which I ask, and then I'll see whether we end up elsewhere from where we began. So tell me, what does personal development mean for you?
personal development really is questioning every one of your beliefs about everything that you didn't expect and coming to your own conclusions, changing from, thinking that tattoos are horrible because your parents did, and realizing that that's why your opinion of tattoos is like that. It's really questioning everything you think is one of your own beliefs and seeing what you actually believe. And that's when development happens, and it's just sort of continual growth and shedding.
I get it. It's fantastic. Yeah, to realize where your beliefs come from and being critical of your own mind, first of all, and where it takes you. Sophia, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's the one piece of advice you would give her?
Don't despair. Things get better. Just hang in there and just remember that you're beautiful and that, the world is a much more magical place than you could ever imagine. And real magic does exist.
Oh, that's great. If you could wave a magic wand and change something in the world as it is today, if you had that power, what would you do? What would you change?
Education systems for children. Have them be with their parents or with a community of healthy adults until they're at least 7, and then educate in a way that teaches how to think, looks at core values, looks at helping people collaborate and have harmony and share and think critically about things rather than just learning facts and figures.
Is that model of education something that exists somewhere, or is it something that you envision?
Some of the Steiner schools have aspects of that, but also, weirdly, I was listening to Conversations with God recently, and in that there's a whole section about education in there, and
all right.
And there's sort of aspects of that. But I think it's a travesty in this country that children get sent to school at 4 years old. In many places, it's like South Africa, it's age 7. And that whole idea of the subconscious being absolute sponge until the age of 7.
Yes.
Children aren't designed to sit at desks and try and do maths at that age and concentrate for hours on end. 9 till 4 or 3. I just like torture, and it's just teaching a very specific mode of, fitting into the conventional work paradigm, and it just breaks my heart.
You put it very eloquently there and very politely as well. I have to say. Do you want to share with me a major aha moment you had recently?
A major aha moment. I think it was that one I spoke to you about earlier with Bruce, this going from seeing is believing to believing is seeing. For me, that just cemented everything that I'd been sort of thinking about and working with for a number of years. And it's shifted my work that I do with clients, to a level of depth that I just wasn't able to hold before. So for me that's just a fundamental.
Okay. And is there any major mistake that you've made that you would like to share so that we can avoid making it as well?
Gosh, See, the thing with major mistakes is they often are the ones that teach you the most.
Absolutely. I know. In a way, it is a trick question. I'm always fascinated to see how people respond to that. I agree with you 100%. That,
I mean,
it's
I
not
think,
about changing it, you know.
yeah. I mean, I think one thing that I've done, it's holding on to the perception that you've made a mistake, beating yourself up about it, judging yourself for it, and going around in circles. This is kind of what I was explaining with the ayahuasca ceremonies, when you can't let go of the story around a mistake, that you then get stuck in the loop of making it actually a really bad thing, when it could have just been a challenge that you move through and move on from and learn amazing things about. And so, yeah, that would be the mistake, is believing it's a mistake and not being able to let go of it, because, past is past. You can't change it. You can only make the most of it and look for the lessons and look for the growth. And if it really was that detrimental, don't do it again next time. And I guess the other thing would be second guessing yourself. There's always those times when you're making a big decision, you have absolute clarity for a second, and then you spend like 5 days or weeks or even years trying to figure out the pros and cons of doing it this way or that way, even though you made the decision in the first 3 seconds. And you can drive yourself nuts and put yourself in such stagnancy by doing that. So my life hack for that is, if you suddenly find yourself bogged down in a decision, it's often because your heart and mind are pulling yourself in 2 different directions, the logical brain and the bit of you that knows. And so, try and do some meditation to just sort of clear anything in those centers, but flip a coin. Because if the wrong thing comes up and you see it, you'll know, go, oh crap, I wanted to do the other one. Like it's the thing that makes you remember what your intuitive self already said. So, flip a coin and see if you're like, yes, or like, oh crap. And then you'll know.
It's the most ancient decision machine in the world. Yeah, but your point of view is very good at it, because I think the worst thing in taking a decision is not to take the wrong one, is not to take one at all and become stuck in that place between. Sophia, well, we've talked about really so many things. Is there something you were hoping I'd ask you and I completely missed it?
No, I think we've had a fascinating, twisty-turny conversation that's been really, really fun. I'm very starry-eyed at the moment and just sort of enjoying the dialogue.
That's great. Tell us, how can people find out more about you? Where would you direct them?
So I have my website, awakenedpotential.co.uk. That's the best place to find me and the different services I offer. I also have a YouTube channel, Awakened Potential, which has a couple of interviews on there. Not much going on at the moment, but it's sort of growing at the moment. So you'll be able to find me talking about things there. And also I have a Facebook page, but really my website is the best place to contact or get to know me a bit better.
That's fantastic. And Sophia, I want to thank you very much for our conversation. It was intriguing, fascinating, and it's really things that I could be talking about and hearing about all day. So I want to thank you very much for sharing your point of view and your wisdom with me and the audience. I also want to thank you for the Psyche process that I did with you a few weeks back, which was a great experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the the transformation as the actions happen. I can already see parts of it. Any last parting words?
Just thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to be talking with you about so many different things, and just your acceptance of some concepts, or just your ability to talk about things that are quite extremely pushing the limits of certain people's worldviews. And it's been really lovely to be able to have that space to just talk freely. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
That's brilliant. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Sophia.
Thanks.
You. All the best.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts, and also share this podcast with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to gain access to exclusive content while supporting this podcast, then become my patron. The link is in the show notes, or you can type bit.ly/pdmpad. If you want to know more about what I do and how I can help you, or if you have any questions, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. Again, the link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/pdmgroup. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.